Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we discuss Puerto Rico's energy landscape. I am the Business Development Director at Invest Puerto Rico, Karen Mojica, and this is my colleague.
Hi, I'm Sam Tolman. I'm a Business Development Manager at Invest Puerto Rico.
It's a pleasure for us to be here with you today and share information about my beloved island and some of the unique conditions that place us at the forefront of energy solutions in the Caribbean, Latin America, and the world. Let's kick things off with a poll from the organizers. You'll have a minute to complete that, and then we'll carry on with a quick video.
We welcome the free thinkers, the innovators who sense opportunities even where others can't. Those who could live anywhere, but choose to go where they could build something new. Innovative solutions, groundbreaking work, big ambitions. We welcome all of these in Puerto Rico. We have an ecosystem of partners ready to support your vision. A highly educated bilingual workforce eager to grow with you. Cutting-edge broadband and 5G infrastructure, and smart tax incentives that let you take bolder steps. World-leading companies already call Puerto Rico home. Technological innovations are driving the island's energy transformation, and great advancements in clinical research are helping people live longer, healthier lives. For those leading the way forward, our doors are open. Game changers, welcome home.
So yes, we are definitely welcoming game changers in different industry sectors, including energy. And you will hear today from 4 great panelists with deep knowledge in local and international energy solutions and financing alternatives. You will have the opportunity to participate in Q&A sessions with the 4 of them. There is a Q&A box that you can write your questions up in, and we can look at those later on during the presentation. We're encouraged that you share those questions and participate actively during the session. So I will start with a brief background on our organization, Invest Puerto Rico. We were created by law in 2017 to promote Puerto Rico as a business and investment destination. We are a private, nonprofit corporation with the mission of attracting companies and capital investment that generates jobs and economic development on the island. As part of our efforts, we help companies and investors to make their landing in Puerto Rico easier and more structured, connecting them with suppliers and key parties in the public and private sector, linking them with associations, municipalities, government agencies, companies on the island, and so on. In other words, we are your allies in Puerto Rico to provide tailored advisory services related to new business and investment. And of course, our services are free of charge. So basically, an overview of Puerto Rico. We are an unincorporated territory of the United States. This means that we have the same protections of the legal federal system, including intellectual property protections, complemented by our local regulations. We are US citizens, our currency is the US dollar, our financial and educational systems follow US regulations. Our main language is Spanish, but our population is mostly bilingual and very fluent in English. We have the same cell phone coverage and technology as on the mainland, for example. In fact, a 2020 report showed that we have even faster internet speeds than on the mainland and some of the fastest in the world. Which is great considering we are a very small island in the middle of the Caribbean. Some unique points about Puerto Rico's relationship with the US are that we share the same customs area. So made in Puerto Rico is made in the USA. We have the same international trade regulations and agreements, and Puerto Rico is considered a foreign jurisdiction for tax purposes. So which means we don't pay federal taxes, only local taxes. It's key to highlight as well, though, that our history and culture are rich and diverse, and they set us apart from the states. So we are a very unique place, no doubt. Puerto Rico is more populous than 20 states with about 3.2 million inhabitants. The island exports and services, products and services to more than 85 countries, and job growth was approximately 5% between 2017 and 2021. Puerto Rico is the largest and most diversified economy in the Caribbean. While tourism only makes up about 8% of our GDP, manufacturing accounts for almost 50%, and out of that, pharmaceutical and medical devices take the lead with almost 30%. Or even higher numbers, I believe. Puerto Rico is also big in knowledge services led by financial and professional services. The Puerto Rico Tax Incentives Code, better known as Act 60, offers exemptions and preferential tax rates for every industry sector, including energy production, manufacturing, and export services. Benefits include rates of 4% on eligible income and up to 75% exemptions on property and construction taxes, total exemption on capital gains, incentives for the purchase of machinery and equipment, and grants for job creation. Companies engaged in research and development are also eligible for up to 50% in tax credits. Puerto Rico's workforce is highly competitive as well, with the highest concentration of STEM graduates in the US. So these are all sectors where Puerto Rico excels. We have more than 60 years of experience in pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing, and more than 30 years of excellence in sterile manufacturing. In fact, 12 out of the 20 largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, such as Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Amgen, have operations in Puerto Rico, and 7 of the 10 largest medical device manufacturers also operate from here. We are the #1 exporter for pharmaceuticals in the United States. Electronics, food, clothing, and textiles are also manufactured on the island. In terms of technology, Puerto Rico is emerging as a global model in the deployment of cutting-edge tools to enable blockchain, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things, all designed to transform almost all sectors, in particular financial services, life sciences, and the aerospace industry. These are all energy-intensive industry sectors. Puerto Rico's infrastructure, as we all know, suffered extensive damage from hurricanes Irma and Maria back in 2017, but it's key to note that many advanced manufacturing operations were not interrupted by the storms, and everything else returned to normal relatively quickly. These events caused the need to renew, improve, and strengthen Puerto Rico's energy network. A legislative mandate seeks to transition to 60% renewable production by 2040 and 100% by year 2050. Almost $80 billion in federal money have been allocated to the recovery of Puerto Rico, including funds to upgrade the electrical network. Renewable energy is a growing segment of the island's energy portfolio, and many companies and communities rely on microgrid generation to ensure business continuity and social security. Despite the challenges in local energy, there are a multitude of options for commercial and industrial users, including wind, solar, energy storage, cogeneration-based microgrids, hydrogen, and various waste transformation projects. Efficiency is also a key goal. It's not just about creating new energy, but making better use of the energy we have.
And nowhere is Puerto Rico's recent economic prospects more clear than in new business creations. In the last 16 in 2021, 52% new business creations have exploded by 52%. This is true with investment funds on the island supporting the startup, innovation, and entrepreneurship ecosystems in Puerto Rico as well. From 2014, where we just had one investment fund, to today, where we have over 30, it's a thriving sector of the economy. You can see that many of these new businesses are in manufacturing, green energy, and professional services. We also have a robust energy ecosystem, as Karen mentioned, and newcomers to the island are welcomed by a whole wealth of peers involved in many of the sectors within energy that Karen just mentioned. And so we hope to be able to connect you with these partners locally who are global experts in providing energy solutions for companies and industries across the board. We have a great presentation for you today, 4 great presentations for you today, and we will start with Alejandro Uriarte. Alejandro is an expert in renewable energy in Puerto Rico. He is the president of the board for Fundación Borincana, and he's also the president and owner of Resolient. Alejandro has been involved in the solar industry in Puerto Rico since 2008, supervising more than 6,000 residential and commercial installations on the island. He is currently president and owner of Resolient, a full capability EPC working on several projects on the island, including a 200 gas station installation initiative. As I mentioned, he's also the president of the board of Fundación Borincana, a not-for-profit organization that focuses on building critical capacities in Puerto Rico that proactively develop a modern, resilient, and distributed energy infrastructure. Alejandro is an industrial engineer with an MBA in finance. Alejandro, take it away.
Alejandro, please could you unmute your microphone?
There you go. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Perfectly. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that. Again, my name is Alejandro Uriarte. I'm the president and founder of Resolient, which is a local EPC company. And I'm the president of the board of Fundación Borincana, which is a non-for-profit organization working in Puerto Rico to promote an inclusive and innovative transition to a clean energy economy. Okay, our mission is to build critical capacities in Puerto Rico to develop a modern and distributed energy infrastructure in the island. Next slide. Fundación Borincana basically has 3 programs. The first one is called PRECAP, which is focused on financial education and assistance to develop energy projects. So anybody in the island that wants to develop an energy project for his community or for a specific need, and they don't know how to start or how to do it, they can enter the PRECAP program, and we train them on how to do a solar project from the beginning to end. And also we help them, or we steer them towards looking for financing for that specific project. The other program is called the Solar Information Technology Training. And basically what we're doing there is we're teaching interested people to use software to develop either a solar project or to develop a solar initiative. So in that area, we have a partnership with a company called Enact, which is a solar CRM. And we train these people to learn how to use Enact so that they can either use Enact for their projects or that they can support other solar companies to use Enact. And then the last core program is called Grupo AC, and it's basically a market development, data-driven analysis and assistance to customers. So we're putting together local data related to renewable energy so that consumers can know some basic KPIs on the island on how we're doing while we move to our goal of being 100% renewable by 2050. Next slide. So what are our strengths? We've been growing pretty fast thanks to awards that we've gotten, grants that we've gotten from USDA and more recently the CDBG. We have a very good network of experts on solar in different areas like capital development, like credit analysis, capital accumulation, and other expertise in the island in terms of operations and financing. And between everybody in the association, we have decades of experience. Our founding director, which is his name is Tom King. has a lot of experience in Puerto Rico and the US developing renewable energy projects. And what are our needs? We are looking for working capital to unlock funding for CDBG DR. As many of you know, a lot of these programs are work basically on a reimbursement basis. And we need working capital so that we can develop these programs and then get refunded later. Also, we're looking at about $200,000 in mission capital to continue doing our growth. And we're looking for strategic partnerships for people that want to help develop the renewable energy ecosystem in Puerto Rico. We're always looking for people to partner with us and help us in our mission to do so. Next slide. Here you can see a summary of how we need the funds for the next couple of years. I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail, but basically we have, most of our funding is coming from grants that we are getting from CDBG and the USDA. We need a little bit more working capital requirement in 2022 to get a program or to expand the program, and the mission capital that we already discussed. Yeah, thank you. So as we said, there are close to $5 million in CDBG grant funding that we can get over the next 5 years, but we need funding capital today to unlock all these funds. So the 400K, it's basically, it would unlock 12.5 times of its value when we're able to roll it out. So it's a high return on investment for the program. Next slide. What we're gonna do with the mission capital is basically hire some key executives. Currently, we don't have a permanent executive director. We're all chipping in on that side, and also a full-time controller. As you guys know, all these programs from CDBG and USDA, they require sophisticated reporting and accounting to get reimbursed. So we need somebody to help us in that area. Next. What's our impact on the island? What are our targets? We want to attract at least $200 million of investment under the pre-cap program. We also want to have more than 400 trained individuals, and we're targeting specifically also women and folks more from underprivileged communities in Puerto Rico, so that we can help them get into the solar business, and also to support close to 300 businesses with data and analysis. Next. Fundación Borincana is it's basically supporting the goals that you can see here that are part of the global goals that we're working with. The three primary goals are affordable clean energy, industry innovation, and sustainable communities. The secondary goals are work, economic growth, education, and no poverty. And then on the third, it's justice through strong institutions, clean water, and zero hunger. Next. We have a network of partners that are supporting us as we continue. As you know, we have Invest Puerto Rico here with us. And then also we have Solar Foundation, Para Naturalezas, Solina Centers, Mercy Corps, RMI, and Centro for Puerto Rican Studies. Next. Our team, basically, we already talked about Tom, who's the founding director, David Greeter, who's the associate director, and then we have Valentina and Gonzalo are as part of the team. And then on the next slide, you're gonna see a list of our instructors and mentors. All of these people have a lot of experience in the island and outside the island developing solar projects. So we have a very strong team of people that are helping us achieve the goals that we're looking at. Next slide. That's basically it. Fundación Borincana, we're looking for partners, and we're looking for investment. So if any of you are interested, you can talk to me, or we can also set up a conference call with Tom and the team in the board to give you more information. So we're looking for all of you for support. And then that's it. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about my company, Resolient. Next slide. Resolient is a local company. It was incorporated in July of 2019. Our mission is to serve the residential and commercial renewable energy market. The company was founded by me. Before being in Resolient, I was a president and part owner of New Energy Consultants, which was a fairly big renewable energy company in Puerto Rico until it was sold in 2019 to a competitor. I've been in the local market for a long time. I was a founding board member of CISA, which is the Storage and Energy Association of Puerto Rico, with my good friend PJ Wilson. And also I was part of a big team of renewable energy experts in Puerto Rico that pushed for the implementation of Law 17 of 2019, which is the law that positions the island or pushes the island to become 100% renewable by 2050. Next slide. Yeah, our basically the purpose of Resolient is to transform our customers into fans. We focus a lot on technology and customer service using advanced tools with CRM to follow up with customers and make sure that they feel that they're being taken care of correctly. Next slide. We work both in residential, commercial, industrial, and consulting. Most of what we do is in the residential and commercial segments. But we can work in all of the areas. On the residential side, Puerto Rico. Okay, you can leave it in the next one. The residential market in Puerto Rico is very interesting in terms of financing. It's being driven by the financing type that the customers can get. I think from all of our residential sales, I would say 90% of them are financed and 10% of them are cash. So financing is very important. The solar financing in Puerto Rico has been led by Sonova for a long time. After Maria, Sunrun also got into the market. And then there's other players that are coming in the island. Recently, we signed an agreement to become a local channel partner for Enium, and Enium has different type of loans, including the most famous one or the one that is being used the most is a 25-year loan at $399. And the reason why that loan is so famous or so used is because when you have a solar and storage system here in Puerto Rico, and you finance it for 25 years, you get close to the same payment that you were paying the utility. So for customers, it's very important that when they change to solar, their cash flow is not affected. So they basically see the loan payment as a replacement for the Luma or the utility payment. There's also in Puerto Rico, there's also a big movement of credit unions that are financing solar. I believe there's more than 30 credit unions right now that are financing solar. And the most common loan with credit unions is a 10-year loan at $399. Next. We recently did a residential project in Dorado, which is a high-end community to the west of San Juan. And this we did it was a 44 kW PV system and a 64 kW storage installation in collaboration with Solarc and Blue Iron. and the installation was featured as one of the best installations of that month in the Blue Planet magazine. Next slide. On the commercial side, we are very engaged doing installations in Puma stations around Puerto Rico. Back in 2021, Resolient got into an agreement with Patch Global to install solar systems in 200 stations. So far, we have visited and designed 80 of those stations, and we have installed 20. And we continue to install stations every day. This is a very interesting project that we feel it is an example of what type of deployments we can do in Puerto Rico if we have the right financing and the right willingness from the off-taker. The project is being financed through a PPA agreement between Puma and Patch Global, and Resolient is the company doing the installation and the O&M. We are located in Kennedy Avenue, very center. We have our office and our warehouse in the same place. For those of you that are local and they want to visit us, we're here to help always. Next slide. And then, now we're just going to go through a couple of quick examples of, interesting installations. This installation here that you saw, it's in Old San Juan, which is a historic district, and it was very challenging to install. The one you're seeing now is another installation in Vega Baja. This was done with electrical cube. Then the next slide. This is another installation in San Juan, residential installation. This one is being done with the M-Phase storage system, which is one of the storage systems that we're using the most right now here in Puerto Rico. Next. This is an example of a small commercial installation that we did in Rincon, which is a town on the west of Puerto Rico, and we did it with Tesla Powerwall. Next. This is another commercial installation for the College of Engineering. This was only PV, but we installed 145 kW in the College of Engineering in San Juan. This is an example of a private school here in Puerto Rico, San Francisco School in Carolina. Next. And this is La Boutique Dubin in Atorrey. This is a strip mall close to the office that we install solar systems. So that's it. I didn't want to get into a lot of detail about the company. In terms of commercial, I didn't mention financing for commercial in Puerto Rico has always been an interesting challenge. There has always been PPA financing available for big projects, but on the commercial side, it's been a little bit challenging to find financing for the smaller segment of commercial. So basically, projects that are 500 kW or up is easier to get financing, but projects that are less than that, it is tougher, and it's tough to get financing for local companies that maybe don't have a credit rating, or don't have or don't follow the same financial structure reporting that we're used to in the US. So I believe there's a big opportunity in Puerto Rico to finance commercial projects that are small to medium size, from anywhere from 50 kW to 500 kW. There's an opportunity there for any of you that might find that interesting. So that's it from my end. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions and to connect.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alejandro. We will get to some questions after our next presentation.
Okay.
Our next presenter is Carlos Varari. Carlos is the Business Development Director for CH4 Group. Carlos holds Geology and Petroleum and Natural Gas Engineer degrees from West Virginia University, a Master's in Sciences from Imperial College London in Petroleum Engineering, and pursued a PhD in Petroleum Engineering from Texas A&M University. He performed research and numerical modeling for the energy industry while at Schlumberger, ExxonMobil, and Chevron. At CH4 Group, he is the Business Development Director and leads project finance and stakeholder integration for energy and infrastructure projects in several markets ranging from Saudi Arabia, Guyana, Suriname, Houston, Colombia, and the Americas. It's all you, Carlos.
All righty, good afternoon, and thank you for joining today. Thank you for the interest. Let's go to the next slide and let's dive in. Talk to you about CH4. So today I want to go over a group of companies, a bit about our projects, financing experience, especially let's hit on why we chose Puerto Rico as a development headquarters, why we stayed there, what are the benefits of us developing projects from the island for the Americas, and of course, a couple of our success stories, past experience, and a little bit of our ESG to wrap up. Let's go to the next slide. So in the next one, we'll see our company. Basically, CH4, the group of companies are engineering, procurement, construction, project management, operation, and financing initiative. We focused on power, oil and gas, petrochemical, mining, and infrastructure. As our name says, CH4 is a molecule of methane, so natural gas is how we started. We take challenging projects in the Americas and underserved markets in the Caribbean. We are based out of our offices in Puerto Rico and San Patricio. We'll see in our next slide a little bit more about a group of companies where we are develop projects. Go to the next one. So we have established ourselves to serve the energy market in the Americas. I have crews working all the way from Saudi Arabia to Ecuador and Argentina. So my work spans about 8 different time zones, everything based and coordinated from Puerto Rico as a headquarters. It was introduced by Karen Mojica at the beginning. The benefits of being a U.S. company, being in a U.S. territory, having the U.S. dollar to back you, access to capital markets, U.S. legislation, and the fiscal incentives, the Act 60, and for the personal Act 22, that allows us to become a very attractive, competitive contractor for our clients in markets where traditionally, let's say, local banking and local project developers cannot develop project by themselves past a certain number. So that tends to be over $10 million. And projects that tend to be smaller that don't attract the big players. So if it's not a $500 million project, then Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Worldly Parsons will knock on your door. That's where we come in. We found that we have a niche in the market where we become very competitive to serve our clients. We have operations ABC Islands, Aruba, Curaçao, and Bonaire. Venikip is part of our group. They've been in Curaçao for the better part of 15 years. And we spend a lot of time these days in Guyana and Suriname, 2 Caribbean identified countries that are experiencing an explosion in growth thanks to the discovery of oil and gas offshore, especially Guyana and ExxonMobil has been all the rage in the news. And it's definitely a very competitive market for us to develop projects. We'll see an example in the end. Let's go to the next slide. So our mandated commitments as a company, of course, emission reduction initiatives, high-end technology, lower the energy cost are key in everything that we develop. We try to propose a single source solution from engineering, procurement, construction, management, and financing integration. We tend to align ourselves to the national strategic energy plans and to the community development programs. Every country is slightly different in what their targets are, what their ambitions, what their needs for a very specific community may be, from working in the Amazon in Colombia and for Ecuador to working in Curaçao. Very distinct needs in terms of us committing to develop the surrounding community. Go to the next one. Our clients, of course, since we started in extractive industries, oil and gas and mining, you'll recognize most of these the multinational companies, the utility companies in Guyana and Suriname, the national oil company. We have, of course, migrated with our clients. We used to be mostly in the gas sector. Of course, renewables came in. Now about 50 to 60% of our projects revolve around sustainability, solar panels, wind, energy storage, grid management through hybrid projects. So we have transitioned alongside our clients. We follow the needs of the market. And we try to be a bit more aggressive in pursuing our target. Let's go to the next one. So briefly going to try to talk about our experience, and we'll see in the next slide a couple of projects. Something I want to highlight is that these projects were engineered, designed, and managed from the island, from Puerto Rico. So you're looking at 2 different gas compression plants. Equivalent energy on the left is about 1 gigawatt of gas running through those gas compressors, one of the largest gas compression plants in the region. 320 million cubic feet, two plants totaling 160 each. And you traditionally don't picture Puerto Rico as being a headquarters for oil and gas, Houston. But everybody thinks on it. We do have a lot of partners, and I'll be in the OTC next week. However, we found that to do projects in South America, being based in Puerto Rico as a US company, geographically, the people, the engineers, the human resource allows us to be quite more competitive and prepared for the engineering part, the procurement, and of course, construction on site. Go to the next one. In terms of the management side, Venezuela and CH4, we've worked on quite a bit of work offshore for E&I, for Repsol. You're seeing projects here on the left. It's basically working on power generation on jackup rigs. Also platforms between Trinidad and Venezuela, seeing here on the right, Sucre, that's used to be ConocoPhillips. Working on turbines, integration, electrical utilities, everything, of course, designed, procured through our Puerto Rico office. So again, we put quite a bit of a export experience into oil and gas. That's where we were gearing and pivoting towards Guyana, Suriname, and developments offshore in Colombia and Brazil. Bringing in our competitive advantage of being a US company in Puerto Rico going forward. Let's go to the next one. A bit of our designs for the IDB and for the Inter-American Development Bank, European Development Bank, in Suriname and Guyana. These are small microgrid projects in power generation, hybrid technologies in Mongo, Albina, and Goloolo. We've delivered substations for the IDB and grid materials in the island. So we tend to work hand in hand with multilateral banking in countries where they're heavily dependent on that sort of financing. And we'll see in the next couple of slides a bit of what we do in terms of project financing. Let's go to the next one. So we try to provide a 360 flexibility for our clients. We recognize that niche in the market where anything below $5 to $10 million can be handled by local banks in most jurisdictions or consortiums. But everything from say 5 to 10 to 500 million tends to not attract big capital. Big capital being London, New York, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and such. So we bring our own EPC experience. We try to put a package to make growth a reality in terms of build, own, and operate, design, build, and finance. We do our own PPAs and we source our own financing for it. And of course, we give our stakeholders, the clients, especially the governments in the region, the possibility to transfer the asset at any point in time so that they can acquire an asset with traditional terms. Some of the jurisdictions we work in, for example, in Guyana, there's no credit rating. Sovereign credit is difficult for traditional lending. And when you go to Suriname in the middle of a default, we also provide different solutions, creative banking solutions out of banks in Puerto Rico or EBIs, international banking entities. They have a very specific license or become very competitive for them to serve clients outside the island while being a US bank regulated by the Commissioner of Banking in Puerto Rico and the Federal Reserve. In the next slide, we'll see a bit of what we're talking about, this niche in terms of financing. So for example, 2015, we did about $300 million for revolving credit lines, basically a very big credit card for projects in O&M. 2017, a project held by Siemens, is a turbine natural gas compression plant, 550 million. That's about the largest one we can do by ourselves, so we think we're competitive at. Of course, 2019, we offered the government of Suriname $90 million for a power plant right before transitioning government. We've dealt with difficult countries such as Argentina alongside Hyundai Heavy Industries and have for 2021 and now 2022 about $200 million for PPA and turnkey projects and renewables approved by our banking partners. And of course, a private credit line for rentals, gas to power, energy utilization, transition away from diesel in the region, whether it's Ecuador, Suriname, or Guyana. It's somewhere we're spending quite a bit of resources to that and are available to do some work. We're wrapping up pretty soon. Let's go to the next one. Talk about the current opportunities. So we are, of course, participating in tranche 2 of the PREPA or Puerto Rico Electric Authority renewable efforts. This should be completed or start, mid this year, hopefully awarded by the end of the year, I think is the current timeline. Tranche 2 will be about 500 megawatts of generation, 250 megawatts of energy storage. We do have, of course, land secured in the island, which is one of the big obstacles for any big developers. Because big patches of land to fill 500 megawatts of generation are not easy to come by in an island or any island for that matter. So we are investing quite a bit of resource and we'll be participating alongside other partners, manufacturers that have supported us in the past. Let's go to the next one, show you something in Guyana. So we are one of the shortlisted companies for the Gas to Shore project that ExxonMobil and the government of Guyana are tendering this year. We will be bidding for the EPC, maybe a design, build, and finance, or build, and operate and transfer, so not quite clear. This is about a $650 million project. So it's a 300 megawatt combined heat and power steam cycle turbines, and also an NGL plant, so getting out LPG and naphtha so they can export, so getting the richness out of the gas to serve the local market. And that should be about a $100 million project in itself. Everything has to be, or hopefully started up by 2024, beginning of 2025. And it's one of the key marquee projects in the region. Finally, a bit of our team's DNA in terms of ESG. We have put quite a bit of work from the start into community management. So all of our projects have to meet certain criteria, reduce the cost of electricity. I cannot sell you a more expensive kilowatt all-inclusive, what you already have. Have to reduce the net emissions of the environment, have to create a certain percentage of local jobs. The technology has to be transferred. We develop a lot of training centers in South America and the countries that we work at. We have to enhance women employment. We at CH4, 55% of our workforce are women engineers. We're very proud of it and hopefully continue to grow. Not common in the oil and gas industry, I can tell you that much. And sustainable and bankable projects. So these are criteria that you'll find pretty standard while working alongside the DFC, the IFC, the World Bank, the IDB. So of course, we geared ourselves towards meeting all these so that we can streamline and speed up the process of getting projects approved by our banking partners in Puerto Rico and also multilateral banking. I think that's the last slide we have. Thank you guys very much. Hopefully it didn't take more than 10 minutes and we'll be available for questions after everybody ends. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. That was perfect. If you would actually stay on, we'll answer a couple of questions here in the next few minutes. Alejandro, if you would join us as well. I want to answer a couple of questions that were put into the chat. Yes, we will be able to share these slides, and I encourage anybody with questions to also put your questions in the Q&A. There's a lot of activity in the chat right now, and if you put it in the Q&A, it helps us filter into the questions we can ask our panelists. Alejandro, are you there? You can turn your camera on if you're available. So Alejandro, I want to start with you because you mentioned something that is a sea change and an important element of the trajectory that Puerto Rico is now on. You referenced Act 17. Can you tell us a little bit about the two key elements of Act 17 with regards to opening up a competitive market and also putting us on a pathway towards renewable energy? And I think you may be muted.
I continue to to forget about the mute button. Sorry about that. Yes, Act 17 of 2019 basically has a couple of interesting things. First, the first one is to create a mandate to get to 100% renewables by 2050, and also that has another mandate to be at 40% renewable by 2030, which is a closer date than the one that I'm more concerned right now. It also added a very important change in the residential market because before that we had to get a permission from the utility to install any solar system in Puerto Rico, and that of course was hindering a little bit the process. So now after that law, any case that is 25 kW or less, you don't need to ask for a permit first. You basically go and install, and after that, you upload to the Luma portal your stamp, a design and an electrical certification stamped by a licensed engineer, and after that you get the net metering process, or you get the net metering contract. Sorry. So that is speeding up the development of the residential segment specifically because most of those projects in that range of less than 25 kW are residential projects. So I believe those are the two key measurements that you get from Act 17. I don't know if I missed another one, because I think you mentioned two, but I'm not sure if those two were the ones that you were referring to or not.
No, you nailed it, and I'm not quizzing you, but you got it exactly right. And actually, I want to hit on one of those specific goals as well: the transition to renewable energy. Carlos, you mentioned that you guys have really, you in particular as a professional have so much expertise in petroleum. You've worked with companies and groups all over the world that have transitioned from petroleum and oil and gas into additional alternative sources and fuels. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with integrating various sources, what you've seen in terms of that movement, particularly in Puerto Rico, with regards to the adoption of clean energy, alternative fuels for industrial processes?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. No, indeed. Look, 10, 15 years ago when it started, oil and gas and the energy space was definitely a different market. You're looking at pre-financial crisis, oil was still rising. It was the first time it hit about 130 bucks. Gas was $9 an MCF. The economies were geared towards a dependency in fossil fuels. We have gladly shifted away from that and hit certain milestones in terms of technology. Look, prices of solar panels have dropped almost every year up until the pandemic, drastically in the past 10 years. So it made technology and the incentives of the government very attractive for companies. And also, of course, the activism of the people demanding cleaner energy, cleaner conditions for islands in general. And I know this I have a lot of colleagues in the big equipment manufacturers, whether it's engines or turbines. It's a very big business to keep this equipment up and running. Islands tend to be saddled with an incredible amount of debt from the fuel bills. This is something very familiar in Puerto Rico, but it's also in Bahamas, Bermuda, Curaçao, Bonaire, where these contracts benefit a few people and create a burden in society in terms of course, fluctuations in commodity pricing. We're seeing in these days, anybody exposed to the LNG market is suffering. I'm personally based out of Amsterdam. This year I'm paying twice as much in gas than it was. Thankfully, look, wind and power don't have that fluctuation. It makes it very attractive for banking as well, because you have a very predictable cash flow coming out and lower risk in terms of, you have solar power, you have a model, you can discount that cash flow at 60% and you can make a decent return in the future. So the industry in general had to adapt to the needs of the market. Remember, I can tell from the oil and gas, and we were always in the energy business. Oil and gas was just part of the value chain. In the end, we wanted to get power and products to our clients. In terms of electricity, look, most of the big players now have a lot of capital to spend in the oil and gas. They're putting incredible amount of resources to greenify their projects, make sustainable, offset their carbon exposure. So anywhere from ExxonMobil, Total, Repsol, and even the big manufacturers like Siemens now have put quite a bit of effort into hybrid technologies and transition away from fossil fuels. Puerto Rico has done outstanding. These milestones for 2040 and 2050 be a green island in a sense in power generation. It's very ambitious. These PREPA tenders, Tranche 1 through 5, will make a big dent of that demand. And of course, it's a rush. Everybody needs to go and work for acquiring the human talent. The regulatory framework is there. The incentives are there. It's a matter of getting to work and achieving these goals, so they don't stay just on paper or politicians' balance.
Perfect. One more question for you both, and we'll hear about distributed generation as a solution here in a moment. But Alejandro, can you speak a little bit to permitting in Puerto Rico for solar projects?
Yes, of course. I was going to ask you. I'm seeing the Q&A here. I was going to ask you if I should answer there or live.
Well, go ahead and give a brief answer live, and if you want to type a more elaborate answer,
that's fine. Yes, the permitting process has. I mean, that question depends on what type of project. You know, if you in terms of utility scale projects, the permitting process is still very slow, cumbersome, and not necessarily defined. But for commercial projects, and I'm gonna when I say commercial projects, I'm gonna say less than 1 megawatt. For commercial projects less than 1 megawatt, and for residential projects I have to say that Luma has done a very good job recently of improving the process. It took them a while, but I would say that starting in 2022, they have caught up. I think they had around 20,000 net metering applications when they took over from PREPA, and of course, that backlog. It took them a while to get it, to get it resolved. But now I'm looking at very quick permitting cycles. For example, in my commercial projects, it's taking 30 to 60 days to get an evaluation letter, which is basically the permit to go ahead and install. And then on the residential side, it's taking less than 30 days to get net metering in most cases, not always, but that's a big change from before with PREPA, that it was taking 90 to 180 days sometimes. So I want to, if there's anybody from Luma here, I want to congratulate them, because they have really turned it around. And right now, at least to the 1 megawatt level, it's working pretty well. I think now they need to focus a little bit more on those projects that are not utility, but are bigger than 1 megawatt. That process is still needs a little bit of fine tuning.
Thanks, Alejandro. And Carlos, very briefly, can you give a little bit of flavor with regards to the permitting process in Puerto Rico vis-a-vis some of the other markets in the region that you've worked in?
Yeah, sure. No, Puerto Rico in terms of speed to market is quite competitive. You'd be surprised how dealing with other jurisdictions can be a bit more complex. There's been a big debottleneck effort ongoing in Puerto Rico after the hurricane. It's been very successful. Of course, we have seen a surge in applications for the fiscal exemptions and the Act 60, so you'll see some backlog in that. That's just a reflection of the competitiveness of the island. People are rushing in to set up in the country. Projects are rushing in into Puerto Rico, and it's definitely improved in the past 2-3 years that we've looked at renewable projects in the island itself.
Thanks, Carlos. And for the viewers that may be less familiar with Puerto Rico, there was 2 acronyms that were just mentioned that we'll clarify. PREPA is the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority. They own and manage all of the centralized grid assets. And then Luma is a private consortium that manages the transmission and distribution systems. All right, Carlos, Alejandro, thank you both so much. We'll get back to you for a question and answer session at the end. Roberto Acosta, if you would like to join us on screen.
Hi guys. Yeah. I mean, you move to the next slide.
Sure. And Roberto is the president of Accurate Solutions and one of the first, if not the first, you'll tell us here in a second, the first solar installer certified in Puerto Rico. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. Well, the presentation's all yours.
Okay. Thank you guys. So I'm gonna be more focused for the large commercial industrial segment, where basically photovoltaics won't do it. So hold for a second, and we go through it. So jump to the next slide, please. So this distributed energy is not something that Puerto Rico is doing. It's not something new either. It's something the world is talking about. It's managing, Europe, United States, all over the world. Right now, Puerto Rico actually is embracing it to compete, support to climate change, compete globally, and make it more resilient and reliable. So a change is coming, and we're leading that. So let's go to the next slide. So a couple of things about Puerto Rico. More geared for the electric sector, right? Even though we are the 3rd largest island on the Caribbean, we are 5.4 times smaller than the Dominican Republic, 3 times smaller in population, okay? But we are 15.6 times more energy, more energy consumption. So we're smaller, several times smaller, but we are several times bigger because of the industrialized sectors in Puerto Rico. We are diverse in wind. We got over 200 megawatt in PV. Some of them are informal installation. We have a small landfill with right now we are in the process, and we are collaborating to transition the landfill to gas. And we hope to be close to 70 megawatt on hydroelectricity shortly. The electrical infrastructure is quite dense, many miles of transmission and distribution lines, many miles of substations, okay? It actually uses a lot of fresh and salt water to operate the centralized power plant. It's a centralized power system. And they're very old, most of them are very old. Like 14 units are on the MAT, that is for EPA, mercury, and air toxin standard, are not compliant. So let's go to the next slide. Great. So historically, we have a couple of issues, right? Just in April, we got because of the fire in one of them, got a blackout of the total island. We got a total blackout also on the earthquake 2010. Just the year after Maria, we experienced a lot of blackouts and power outages. Maria actually was the longest and largest blackout in US history. So that gives you a sense with the industrialized sectors we got in Puerto Rico and the importance of energy, that we need to get less cost, but also much more reliable. So let's go to the next slide, please. So why we do what we do? Just to spend a couple of things, because when we started on the first project on CHP, actually was the first in Puerto Rico, it was for me a transformating experience. We were doing, for the ROI and the reliability, but the first project was a hospital. When Maria hit, that was the only hospital that could continue operation. And actually the Department of Health and the Army moved to the hospital to save life, while many other hospitals were without power. So that was a transformation that we live. So we are just making a social change, climate change, a cost change, and what we believe is a new urban model. So let's go to the next slide. So per IEEE, I'm a member of IEEE Science College. So a smart city, okay, just engage the energy, water, transportation, and several key factors, right, to the well-being of the people. But energy itself is the single most important feature of a smart city, okay? So we need to get smarter, and the first step to get smarter is making the grid smarter in Puerto Rico. So let's go to the next slide, please. So with this distributed energy approach and a smart grid integration with making a smart city, we hope to be a step ahead on building what we call, a new business and urban model. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what we do before we get into the specific? We design, build, maintain, and operate the more efficient power plant in Puerto Rico, no doubt about it. But CHP is combined heat and power. We reclaim heat, and you're gonna see shortly, we operate at 85, 86% measured real-time efficiency. No other plant in Puerto Rico is actually doing it. And on CHP, we are doing it, at the highest level. Okay, we actually operate the more reliable power plant in Puerto Rico. All of our customers are focused on the business continuity. Hospital, if they lose the power, life will be at risk. Data centers, anyone that business continuity is of essence, okay? So there are many ways to do it, PPAs, all this back on, okay? We are flexible on the way. We just want to engage with the customer and provide the best life cycle cost CHP power plant. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is Puerto Rico. So you guys to have a quick look. Historically, has been a centralized system, electrical distribution, with a couple of major power plant, one distributed in the south, Ecoelectric and Costa Sur, a little bit, the second largest, the complex in Aguirre, okay? Then Palo Seco and others a little bit spread out of the island, but they're not that much. Okay, so just to see, if you could see, you know, they're very aged. They're from 1960, 1970. So the newest is from 2000, is already like 22 years old. So let's go to the next slide, please. So what has been the CHP track record before we go on the specific of CHP? Just after the hurricane, we hosted, FEMA, all those guys in the slide, okay, just visited to see how we were operating off-grid continuously, okay, and efficiently, okay. And from that moment, it was like a trigger. Right now, in like 3-4 years, the CHP have grown to be a 143 megawatt capacity in over 44 projects spread around it. If you see the island where, I just put the multinational and the big companies, right? But there are 44 projects doing it. They all depend on electricity, and all of them are doing investment, okay? Angel Baxter, Banco Popular, Hewlett Packard, Pfizer, you name it. All of them are moving to have a CHP. They're all on CHP. Some of them have CHP and solar, okay? But solar itself, as I argue, will not be enough to operate reliably the facility off-grid, like we did for Maria for many times, okay? So investment from this multinational, have been solid, okay, and have had a great receptions. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, why CHP and when CHP is of essence? So here is just to see, not from Puerto Rico, but traditional way of how electricity is being built. If you see from all the source, all the energy on the input source, okay, most of it goes as waste, and most of those waste could not be effectively recovered. Okay, so at the end, wasting all that heat, you go to their own consumption, the transmission and distribution losses. So in Puerto Rico, at the end, when you add that up, in average, the efficiency of the power plant at the end user is close to 27% efficient. That's very low. So the CHP model, let's go to the next slide, please. CHP model concentrate in actually from the fuel supply, at least operate at much higher efficient rate. The engine usually we do from 40 to 44% efficiency. So just without recovery, we are the point of use. So we're going to be more efficient, and they're going to be less costly, okay, than the utility. But the beauty of it is that all that waste that usually is more than 60%, okay, we're going to recover it, and the waste we're going to recover it all. So all of our projects, the only thing we lose is the 10%, close to 10-15%. That is the surface heat, okay. That in Puerto Rico, we're going to be difficult to recover because we're not, it's a tropic. We will not be heating space. So that's why the CHP, while doing simultaneously, is so effective. And right now, all of the projects are like 3 generations that we do chill water, steam, or vaporization as well, in hot water simultaneously. So let's go to the next slide. So just what we could do with all that heat, just briefly, we could do chill water. And some people will say, well, how you going to do chill water with heat, right? But there's absorption chiller and other processes that you could use. You could use steam or hot water, space heating. And when there's not much left to do, you could do additional electricity with that heat, okay? It will not be as efficient or doing steam or chill water, right? But it's still ways to recover, and that have to be done, right? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, right, is that there are other benefits additional to reliability. That for me is very important, okay? As an example, the water we got. So PREPA extracts about 1.7 billion gallons a year of fresh water and 620.5 billion gallons of salt water to operate the facility. Per megawatt, okay, usually we save about 1.8 million gallons a year of fresh water and 295 million gallons of salt water. So that's a huge, being water is one of the things that we need to conserve. The only thing is about emissions, right? You know, PREPA have many units that are not on compliance with EPA. And even with the best EPA standard today, we are below those. So compared to traditional combined cycle power plants, we're still way below those limits in operation on the CHP. We also, since we are making the power in several sources at the point of use, there's no transmission and distribution losses. So there is a hurricane that actually drops a transmission line like Maria, you could continue to operate because you're self-generating the facility, okay? So that brings, you know, lower fuel, lower operating costs, higher reliability. And one thing that all those businesses need, they need predictability, controllability, and be resilient as well, okay? So that's why it has been a great success on the industry. So let's go to the next slide, please. So some of the consideration that we also talk to our users and the ones that I feel that are important when doing this kind of investment that happens when I started in 2008 on PV, right? It's like at that time, it was still batteries were there. So most people were doing grid tie until they saw in the hurricane that the solar panel without the grid could not do much, right? So I encourage all my customers to operate what they call continuously island operation 24/7, okay? So that for me is something important. So they could operate even with or without the grid, and they could operate islanded continuously. The projects, and we are the only one actually in Puerto Rico doing that kind of integration. All our projects embrace energy storage. Why? Because the gas plants used for continuous power generation usually don't have that inertia for load fluctuations. So you want to have a high quality of power with those kind of systems. So the energy storage has been a key element, okay, of keeping a very tight tolerance on the frequency and voltage. Actually, that same technology is being used by Barbados and other small utilities on the Caribbean to make a stiffer grid, okay? Another important consideration is to do close transition to all of the source of power, you know, the cogens to the energy storage, to the grid, to the standby generator. At the end, you need all sorts of power to orchestrate, right? And operate seamlessly, flicker-free between each other. The other is to have the black start capability, that if you lose power, be able to black start even without power, and have the fuel flexibility, LNG, LNG, or LPG. Engine will run it all. Actually, we are in the project, developing the project that is producing renewable natural gas in Puerto Rico. So that should be in a couple of months being executed. And the project that I'm right now will operate continuously in LNG. So it's going to be a reciprocating engine, 4 megawatt project, but continuously on LNG.
And so, Roberto, I'm going to jump in. We've got just 20 minutes left. And so
okay.
If you want to close up, we'll get on to
just go and jump to the next one. The matter is that, you know, environmental speaking, in terms of resiliency, reliability, okay, so you're going to be reducing emissions. NOx, as an example, reduced by 98.5%. You're going to be efficient. You're going to be reliable, small footprint, okay, scalable and predictable energy cost, okay, and that's our business, you know, and that's how that's being adopted by many people. Actually, we feel we have a spin-off, a great movement, and hopefully those several players going to be integrating in a grid soon for the collaboration of all the consumers. So that will be. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Roberto. Our next presentation is going to be by Michael Grimm, a loan program officer with the U.S. Department of Energy. Mike is a contractor and a senior investment officer with the U.S. DOE Loans Program Office. At the LPO, Mike is responsible for underwriting loans and loan guarantees in the areas of renewable energy and advanced technology vehicles, and helping deploy the Loan Program Office's $40 billion of available authority. Michael, if you want to turn your camera on and unmute yourself.
Sure. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
We're working. Yep. All right. Perfect. So thank you, Sam. And before I get into the presentation, a couple of quick comments. I know a lot of people have talked about the business reasons for coming to Puerto Rico. I actually live here in Puerto Rico, and with my job with LPO, I could live anywhere in the world. I highly recommend Puerto Rico as a place to live, not just as a place to do business. I think the incentives here are great, and things are really heading in a good direction. But living here, it's the best of all worlds. It's Caribbean. You have good infrastructure in general, and the culture is fantastic. The people are fantastic. So, come down and join us here in Puerto Rico. The other comment that I'll make before I get into my slides, apologies in advance. This is going to get a little bit technical. So for those of you who have been through finance courses, I apologize in advance for making you relive that trauma. So basically what I'm going to talk about here is how can we achieve 10 cents per kilowatt hour renewable energy in Puerto Rico, and what do we need to do to make that happen? If you can go to the next slide. So I'll introduce LPO quick, talk about how we provide financing and what we do and the amount of capital that we have available. And then I want to talk about sort of what the value is of using debt in capital structures. This will get into that finance information and finance discussion that I was talking about. And then I'll talk about how we actually enable access to commercial debt. How do we lower the cost of debt in these utility scale projects? And what does a bankable transaction structure actually look like? And what do we need to achieve in order to have bankable utility scale projects that not only LPO can lend to in Puerto Rico, but that other commercial lenders can also lend to on the islands. So really quickly, LPO is, as our director Jigar Shah has said here in the quote, there are many areas that are mature from a technology standpoint, but not mature from an access to capital standpoint. And that's an axis where there's a clear mandate for LPO to participate. And so what we are is effectively a commercial bank that exists within the Department of Energy that provides a bridge to bankability for innovative technologies that can help decarbonize the US energy system. And it's, if you can go to the next slide. And so, you have this sort of innovation cycle, innovation valley of death, sometimes people call it, for new and innovative technologies. And we can provide project financing for technologies to reach that last mile to get full market acceptance. So you have these first initial sort of commercial deployments and demo facilities. You might have some follow-on commercial deployments where you still have some construction risks. Then you scale up with a little bit of commercial capital. A lot of that happens with private equity and venture capital. But before you can really get to the commercial debt market and achieving securitization and full market acceptance, you have to scale up the technology. And so LPO can help projects that have some sort of innovative technology and help them really achieve that scale. So if you go to the next slide, the areas that we are really sort of interested in are, battery storage, energy storage, advanced nuclear, biofuels, carbon capture, virtual power plants, onshore wind, offshore wind. So this is kind of the breakdown, and you can see these are the proportions here are really the sort of the size of the types of transactions that we're seeing. We currently have 77 active applications. We have 75.9 billion in loans requested, and we're getting about 1.5 new applications per week. So, we do have a big pool of funds, but it's limited funds. So if you have a project that you're interested in having LPO support, get into the queue sooner than later, because whoever gets to conditional commitment first will lock in the loans earlier on. So for those of you with projects in Puerto Rico or mainland US or in the other US territories, reach out sooner than later and get the process started. And you'll see my contact information at the end of the presentation. You're welcome to reach out to me or just go to the LPO website. Now, LPO provides loans and loan guarantees to projects that have demonstrated potential to accelerate decarbonization, right? And so it's focused on sort of clean energy technology. We have innovative clean energy, 3 billion available capital there, 8.5 billion for innovative fossil energy, 10.9 billion for innovative nuclear, 17.7 for ATVM, which is advanced transportation. Doesn't mean that all of the technology has to be used in electric vehicles. It can be manufacturing of batteries that can be used in electric vehicles. It can be manufacturing the EVs themselves. It can be recycling of EV materials. It can be all kinds of things. So it's not just the EVs themselves. We also have 3 billion available in innovative clean energy loan guarantees, as well as a tribal energy loan guarantee program where we have $2 billion available. So we have 40 billion available in capital right now. We have 75 billion in existing applications. So whoever gets to the finish line first will get access to those funds. Then we need Congress, US Congress, to appropriate more funds so that we can go out and do more projects. Now, let's talk about the situation here in Puerto Rico. One of the challenges historically in Puerto Rico is this very high cost of electricity. So you can see Puerto Rico is one of the highest cost of electricity, and this information is a bit old. So I believe Puerto Rico is probably number 2 or number 3 right now in the US. Average cost is somewhere around 20 cents per kilowatt hour. That compares with late 2020 price for utility scale solar in Portugal of 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour, right? There was another price that came in under an RFP in UAE that was 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour. So why is electricity in Puerto Rico so much more expensive than the bids that we're seeing in other markets? You can look even in the mainland US, we see bids coming in on RFPs of 2.5 cents or 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So why is that? Well, there's really 2 drivers. This is the levelized cost of energy for a variety of technologies provided by Lazard. There's really 2 key drivers behind achieving a low levelized cost of electricity. One is economies of scale, right? The other is access to debt. So as you can see here, that top line, solar PV, rooftops residential, that rooftop residential PV levelized cost of energy can be around 22 cents per kilowatt hour. It can be as high as that, as low as about 14.7 cents per kilowatt hour. But if you look at utility scale solar, utility scale wind, which are lower down, you can get to, between 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour to 4.1 cents per kilowatt hour for solar, and 2.6 cents to about 5 cents per kilowatt hour for wind. That's cheaper, much cheaper than nuclear. That's much cheaper than gas peaking. It's cheaper than coal. and it's cheaper in general, most cases, than gas combined cycle, even if it's used and operated as a baseload facility. Right. And so the larger the project that you do, the more, and the reason for that is because of the economies of scale, right? So the larger the project that you do, the cheaper that it gets with solar and wind. And that's because you can put in bulk orders for panels and get a deal there. You need less inverters per kilowatt hour of energy. There's lots of savings throughout the process that make it much cheaper at a utility scale to provide electricity than at a kind of a small scale. And so that's kind of the problem that we're trying to solve at DOE LPO. We can do loans. Typically, we look for project sizes of about $100 million or more. So how does this work, and why is debt important in terms of the capital stack? So you can see this top line. This is the weighted average cost of capital. So anybody who's been through finance is probably vaguely remembers this. And apologies for making you relive the trauma. But if you're financing something on a 100% equity basis, that top line there, your cost of equity, let's say you assume it's a 14% cost of equity. Cost of debt is invariably lower. So let's assume you have a 6% cost of debt and a 10% tax rate. Well, because you don't get a tax shield with equity, your weighted average cost of capital with 100% equity is 14%. If you lever up to 80%, LPO can provide loans and loan guarantees up to 80% of eligible project costs. A lot of times we come in a little bit lower than that, but we can get up to 80% in some cases. If you have 80% of your capital coming from debt at 6%, suddenly your weighted average cost of capital drops in half, right? 7.12%. And what is the impact to the electricity price or the tariff that gets paid? Well, you go from 12 cents per kilowatt hour without debt. And even if you only have 10-year debt, we can provide, with a 25-year PPA, we can probably provide a 20-year loan, which will lower the cost of debt even further and reduce the price even further. But even assuming conservatively that you only have 10-year debt, you drop the price by 20%, which is 10 cents per kilowatt hour, right? So you can achieve this very, very easily if it's possible to access debt capital. These are conservative estimates. As I say at the bottom, we could see potentially as high as 50% lower electricity prices in Puerto Rico than what we're assuming here if we increase competition and make commercial debt available through bankable structures. So how do we enable access to debt? I won't go into too much detail on both of these. There's links at the bottom that can go into more detail on discussing each of these. But banks and lenders look at the 5 C's of credit for all of the counterparties in a utility scale transaction. On the right, basically, this is the typical structure that you see for a utility scale project kind of around the world, right? This is kind of global best practice. If you want more detail, there's a link to the World Bank website where I pulled this from that can tell you more about each of these things. But basically, Project Finance 101, risks are allocated to the party that is best suited to manage those risks. And we look very carefully at each of the contractual terms that we have in place. That's the offtake agreement, that's the EPC, the O&M agreement, the operations and maintenance agreements. We look at each of these terms and conditions and who the counterparties are, make sure that the counterparties are creditworthy. And if not, then you need additional support, which is why on this sort of global best practice illustration on the right, you have this grantor and a concession agreement, right? And that's typically the host government. Go to the next slide. And why that's important is because you can actually use this structure and the financial wizardry that investment bankers like me use to increase the credit rating and thereby lower the cost of debt. So down at the bottom of this chart, you can see that a CCC rated corporate bond right now, as of a couple of days ago, is yielding 10.57%. That's kind of roughly equivalent to the interest rate. However, if you can get it up to a triple B, suddenly you cut your cost of debt in half to about 4.48%. And if you can get it all the way up to a double A, the cost of debt drops even further to 3.6%, 3.7%. Right, so how do we do that? And what's the structure that we currently have in place? And how does it tie into what's happening here in Puerto Rico? Well, PREPA's standalone credit rating is non-existent. The rating agencies, because it's in bankruptcy, have withdrawn ratings. So it's going to be higher than that 10.57% cost of debt. And in fact, there's no way for lenders to lend currently to projects that only have an offtake agreement with PREPA, right? So a commercial bank won't do it, LPO can't do it, right? So what do? Okay, so we need a credit enhancement. Well, okay, who could provide that credit enhancement? It's a state-owned utility. So typically what happens in these kinds of situations where you have a credit challenge utility is the government of Puerto Rico or the host government would provide a guarantee for the offtake obligations. That gets you up to the credit rating potentially of the host government, right? In this case, government of Puerto Rico is coming out of bankruptcy. We don't know what the credit rating is going to be. We've spoken to the rating agencies. And probably the top that you're going to see in terms of ratings is about what Guam has, which is double B. That gets you up to maybe a 6.58% cost of debt. Now, if we can get a loan guarantee in place from DOE Loan Programs Office, then suddenly the credit rating jumps to AAA, and you're looking at maybe 3.38% cost of debt. Right. And so imagine what the impact of that has on the cost of electricity in the tariff, right? It drives it down significantly, much more than I indicated previously. So there's effectively three options to get to a bankable structure that will enable LPO to lend. The first option here is something that we've seen in very few markets. And it's basically an infrastructure guarantee facility that gets capitalized by the host government, right? For Puerto Rico to do something like this for the tranche 1 through 6, they would need to allocate about $3 billion of capital directly to this entity in order to capitalize it properly to issue these guarantees. So obviously that's going to be challenging in the current environment, right? This also is not a market standard structure. In the markets where it's been used, it's been very slow to uptake. You're talking years to get this thing up and running, and it's just not a great way to go. Option B is no government support. We'll just wait and see until the credit rating and payment history for PREPA are bankable. There's no cost to the government. They don't need to do anything. They just need to wait. So the problem with that is that it's going to take a very long time for banks to get comfortable with PREPA as a off-taker. So we've got this 2025 deadline to procure 3.7 gigawatts of renewables. There's no way you're going to meet that with bank debt. It's going to take way longer than that for the banks to get comfortable. And so these 25-year PPAs, if projects get done under the current sort of transaction structure, all of these are going to be locking in a high price for 25 years. Right, so the people of Puerto Rico are going to be paying 20% more to 100% more for electricity if the government just doesn't want to have a bankable structure in place.
Michael, I'm
Yes.
going to jump in here, and we just have a minute or so left, so I'm going to skip to your key takeaways slide if you want to wrap it up.
Yep. All right. So just going to touch on that last one here, this slide here. All right. So this global best practice is for the government to provide a concession agreement or a government guarantee. And then you back that up with basically a direct agreement between LPO and the host government, which is government of Puerto Rico. If you do that, you can get to a bankable structure. So go to the next slide. You can see Puerto Rico market characteristics on the left, isolated grid, no corporate PPA market. So these are some of the characteristics why this is necessary. And then how we mitigate those risks and what we do is global best practice to implement this structure are the things on the right? So the PPA has to be honored by the utility, fair risk allocation, use of widely accepted governing law, force majeure provisions, independent arbitration. You need termination payment provisions, lockbox for payments, a government guarantee, and a direct agreement, like I said, between the government of Puerto Rico and the PRI provider. So that's the structure that you need to enable access to debt from LPO and other commercial banks and drive down the cost of electricity. So if you do this, you get an energy cost savings of about 17% to 50%. That results in a tariff between 10 cents per kilowatt hour to 6 cents per kilowatt hour, assuming you're starting at a base tariff of 12 cents per kilowatt hour. If you don't do that, PREPA ends up paying 20% to 100% more for electricity. So this is basically the global best practice and what the investment bankers around the world do to structure projects to enable access to debt when the off-taker, in this case PREPA, is not itself creditworthy. So that's pretty much it. I think I've got on the next slide is just a quick, what do the credit ratings mean? Obviously PREPA is currently off the bottom of the chart right now. But I think working together, and this is something that we're working on right now with PREB and PREPA, is to implement a bankable structure because the current PPOA and current documents are not bankable. We're trying to improve that. And hopefully we can move this up the credit rating scale and get access to cheap commercial debt. And
Michael, thank you so much. Excellent presentation. And if you would stay on video, Roberto, Carlos, Alejandro, if you would join us again, we just have a few minutes left before we wrap up. Before we get to a final question that I'd like to pose to all four of you, I want to encourage everybody still on the line to check out our website, www.investpr.org. I'd also encourage you to look at an investment platform that we created about 8 months ago called Impeller. You can find that I'm putting a link in the chat right now, investpr.org/Impeller. An opportunity for projects looking for capital as well as capital looking for projects to meet, connect, and invest. I'll also encourage everybody on the line to reach out to Karen and myself. We will be at Select USA, which is the United States' Foreign Direct Investment Summit this June. And we'd love to hear from you and help you get set up and open operations in Puerto Rico. So with that being said, I have one final question for our panelists, which is, there are 140 islands in the Caribbean, about 43 million people. Roberto, you touched a little bit on this, that we're not the largest island, but we have the largest energy demand. Beyond that, what makes Puerto Rico unique as an island economy, but what does that mean specifically for energy innovation? And if you each want to take a minute or so, we'll wrap this up. Michael, you want to start?
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So what makes Puerto Rico unique in the 140 islands and 43 million other inhabitants of the Caribbean basin? What makes Puerto Rico a unique economy, and what does that mean for energy innovation?
Yeah, well, I think, obviously of all the Caribbean places, so you do have, U.S. Virgin Islands, which has got similar sort of treatment and everything like that as a U.S. territory. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. It's part of the U.S. Everybody, who is a U.S. citizen can live here. All Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. It's got a unique tax structure, which is different from any of the other territories, actually, and different from the U.S. But you've got, the same rights and benefits here, same protection of law. And it's part of the U.S. So if you're doing business here, really you can say you're operating under U.S. law, right? And so I think that sets it apart from a lot of the other island nations in the Caribbean. And I think it's also very, it's part of the U.S. in terms of infrastructure and standard of living and opportunities. The other thing that I think makes Puerto Rico special on sort of an individual level is the sense of community here, right? Like people in Puerto Rico work together and come out together. You see this during the natural disasters that have happened, the hurricanes and the earthquakes. You see people really, there's a sense of community here where people are trying to work together and help each other. And I really love that about the island.
Excellent. Thank you. Alejandro, if you want to unmute yourself and add your thoughts as well. And very quickly, I want to give Roberto and Carlos an opportunity to speak as well. And we've got about a minute left. Yeah,
I mean, other than that, of course, because we are US, if you install solar systems in Puerto Rico, they qualify for ITC if you are a US investor or if you have US tax needs. So that's something that's also unique. And yes, you will find that everybody in Puerto Rico, it's very aware that we need to go renewable. And that's something also very, very unique. I don't think there's a single person that would disagree with my statement. So
excellent. Thank you, Alejandro. Roberto?
Yeah, my point will be, Puerto Rico is the largest electric energy sector market in the Caribbean. Also, because of the size of it and the issues going on is where the most of the opportunities are. The things that the rate of electricity are high will make a great return on investment. Puerto Rico also have a great investor law. Law 60 actually wrap many incentives for investors to be here in Puerto Rico and put money and get the best returns worldwide. I really believe that we got the market, we got the infrastructure, and we got the opportunity to excel in all the areas that we're doing so far.
Thank you, Roberto. And Carlos, final words?
Indeed, being part of the U.S. government and while being large in terms of demand and the Caribbean being very small in the market cost of the U.S., there's quite a bit of federal support and money for investors goes a long way in Puerto Rico. Margins are quite higher due to the tax structure. And the openness in the island for business is something that pulled us toward the island. We've had business in other islands in the Caribbean and South America. It became a de facto hub for operations, very seamless. So, highly recommend it.
Thank you all so much for your presentations. For those who participated in the webinar, thank you so much. And we'll get to your questions in the chat and as well as in the Q&A offline. And thank you to the
everyone.
Island Innovation Forum. Sorry.
Thank you to the panelists as well.
You got it.
Have a great day.